coming up on Small Town Charm. I'm terrified. We're in the scariest place ever. Help us. Keep watching Small Town Charm.
Gunshot! Oh!
Welcome into Small Town Charm. My name is Daniel. We got Chris. We got Mike. Thanks again for tuning in. If you like this show, wherever you're watching or listening, please like it, subscribe to it, leave a great rating and review. Anything like that definitely helps us out. Also sharing it with people on social platforms. That helps us out a lot as well. Haven't mentioned that before. So we are in a place. I don't want to give it away. It's not I don't think I would do it justice. But I do know that I've been told before we came. I was terrified to come here.
I had to put one of those steering wheel things.
The club.
I had to put the club on my car.
I was
Hopefully it's still
terrified.
there.
I mean, there's definitely like a lot of crime
Yes.
surrounding us right now.
I've heard several noises that I thought sure were criming.
There's definitely criming. But there's really good deals on crack downstairs.
Yeah. I saw a car with teenagers in it on my way here. I was terrified.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, I've been told that I should be scared of this place. But somehow, I think it's because I had you guys. I've been told you guys look massive on camera. So
Not me. I'm not me.
I feel safe now. So I came because you guys were here.
Yeah.
But I was so scared to be here. But now I'm shocked that I'm here. It's not too bad. It's pretty darn nice. Chris.
Yeah.
Where are we?
We are in the only apartment in Nolensville right now.
The only.
The only apartment.
The only apartment. And it is just terrifying.
It's terrifying. I mean,
I cannot believe that anybody would think about ever bringing like a lot of these to town.
It's pretty grimy. I mean, this is like distressed wood.
Yeah.
There's stainless steel appliances.
And I mean, like, look at the backsplash. Like,
It's so distressed, the wood. It's almost like someone did it on purpose.
Yeah.
It's almost.
Yeah.
Almost.
And it's like the developer ran out of money and they didn't put uppers up.
Yeah.
It's just like chic shelving up.
They're showing off this fancy glass to make us think that it's
I feel
high
like
quality.
Joanna Gaines would just like have a heart attack if she walked in here because it's just like, how could anybody have such a trashy?
You know what
place
though?
like
You know
this
how you know
apartment?
it's very trashy? These hardwood floors were probably bought on a discount. That's why they put this really expensive rug over
Oh
it.
yeah, totally.
Well, also, I can't tell you how little traffic I encountered on the way here. It was, the parking lot was practically empty when I got here. It was terrifying. No, but we shouldn't. We're not going to disclose where this is. That's not fair. But it's beautiful. I mean,
It is beautiful. It's a little personal to me. So I mean, not many people know this. I don't go around like sharing it, but I went through a divorce a little over a year ago, and when that was all occurring, I needed a place in Nolensville that I could live,
Right.
and still like stay relatively close to my life and everything like that. And so, know somebody that has an apartment. And
the apartment.
The
apartment.
The apartment. Yes.
Okay, so
And it was great. I lived here for about 3 months.
okay, sorry, I didn't interrupt you. I
Yeah.
apologize. That is an example that I don't think anyone brings up about another great reason use for apartments. I know a few different people who've recently gone through divorce and being able to stay close to your family, your kids, and having an option where it's not. You're not living another town away, where, from a practical standpoint, but also just honestly,
Community.
community. You need your friends around you.
Yeah.
Your kids need to feel if that's happening or you're going through that. Your kids need to see you there, be present. Having that accessibility, and it's not that's not a rare thing these days. I don't know what the most recent stats are, but it's around half.
Yeah.
Half people are going to go through this.
Right.
So it's not like a small segment of people that this would serve.
Right.
That's one of many. But this is our apartments episode. This is our apartments in density episode. At least the first one, because we'll probably end up doing 8 more. But I know people. We're being facetious with this, but there's so much feeling without information going around about apartments or higher density and what that means for this town. And I don't know, what I've seen, at least in the online conversation, is people have their opinion, their feeling about it. They scream their opinion or feeling. If you provide them with some information that says, no, like, I think you're looking at this wrong, or you're missing something. I haven't seen anyone really consume that information who feels the other way. They just say, no, it's wrong. It doesn't make sense to me, or I'm not going to read it. Don't tell me about this. So, Mike, why is density good? Higher density? Is 12 units per acre? That's like the magic number everyone's screaming about. Like, is density good for our town? Is it bad for our town? Why?
So density is trash. The whole concept of measuring your development by density numbers is the biggest crock of crap NIMBYs have developed. So what you're essentially saying is, like, here is the total square area of the parcel that you're trying to develop, and this is your limit. It doesn't look at anything. Like, so, like, the thing about density is that people automatically get freaked out. They're like row houses, projects in big cities, right? That's not good density. Putting everybody in tiny little boxes that are separated by highways or big roads and away from community services, that's not good density. So, like, on that parcel, if you want to do 5 and you want to separate them all and have it low income or affordable, that's not good. That's horrible. That ruins your whole entire city. But density in terms of, like, downtown Franklin, right? Like, we're going to do mixed use. We're going to mix the uses. There's going to be parks. There's going to be accessibility to services. It's going to get policed. It's going to have good coverage with fire and public works. That's great density. And in my mind, if you're going to do density like downtown Franklin or downtown Mayberry, anywhere, right? Like, the more the merrier. The more people you can put in a business and commercial district, the better for that district, and the more profitable and the better the better community you're going to build. If you put more people that you seclude, like, I'm from Chicago, right? And in Chicago, I'm sure there's people out there that heard Caprini Green was the big project. And Caprini Green was high-rise apartments. They were all like 1 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom. Like, it was government subsidized, basically government housing, and they put thousands of people in these blocks, in these projects. Of course, that density is horrible, because what you're doing is you're taking people that need help, and you're putting them all in one area,
Cutting them off.
and then that's the first area that you cut off all the services to, because those people tend not to vote.
You're creating a ghetto.
You're creating a ghetto, right? So, like, when people hear apartments and density, they think big city ghettos, where they should be thinking, like, well, if we're going to do density, we have to be able to apply that density towards profitable and community building, like downtown Franklin. I don't necessarily want to be like downtown Franklin. We cannot be like downtown Franklin. You cannot, you can't walk into this development and the zoning trying to replicate downtown Franklin, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna create like a faux downtown, which is gonna be tacky. People are gonna see right through it. You have to find what your niche is, and you go from there. So you can't replicate, because it has to be authentic.
Yeah.
It's like it's what I get from you. I'm a music guy, so what I get from you saying is people talking about how density is bad would be like me saying country music is bad, and I say it's bad because look at Luke Bryan. And what you're saying to me is, no, man, if you would just, like, actually use your brain a little bit, you'd also discover George Strait. It's like, we don't have to have, just because they both fall into the same category,
Right,
doesn't mean that you have to have one. Now, number one, I'm sure there's some Luke Bryan fans watching. That's fine. Just flip the whole argument and say that you're missing. Maybe you like both. Pick out somebody else. I don't care. Pick out Taylor Swift. That's fine. You know what I mean either way. Don't send us an email, okay? But the idea, again, it's the rejection of nuance that always gets people in trouble in these arguments.
Yeah, I think so a question that keeps getting floated by some people in NAG, Nolensville Advocacy Group.
But they don't advocate anything. But that's another story. Okay.
They don't have a group. But
Maybe that's
It's also not a group.
Maybe that's a whole nother.
Do they live in
episode.
Nolensville? We don't know.
Well, and full disclosure, we're in talks to have one of the NAG members on the show. Yeah.
Really?
I'd love
Might
that. I'd
happen.
love that.
Might happen. We'll see. But yeah,
Please come.
one of the talking points though that keeps getting put out there is like, would somebody please just tell us how many apartments is too many?
Mm-hmm. Give us a number.
Give us a number. Like, we just want a number. And I have no problem like just answering this question. I don't think it's unlimited. I'm not willing to put a number on it because there is no cap to me personally.
Yeah.
Like, I think what people are unwilling to say and unwilling to boil down this argument to is you're either for apartments or you're not.
Oh yeah,
You either want them or you don't. And people that are saying like, well, you know, I'm okay with like 200, but like 700, that makes me feel. It's like, well, why? Like, why? Why is 200 better than 700? If you're for 200 apartments, then we're still going to get 500 single family homes. Like, being against apartments does not mean you're going to like lessen traffic. We're
Right.
still going to get traffic. People are still going to build neighborhoods. We're still going to have people moving here. And I think the data that's out there that shows that actually like single family homes create more traffic.
Oh,
There are
hell
more
yeah.
people that
It's
live
not
in
even
them,
close.
more drivers, more trips, mixed use areas that are high density with lots of apartments built into all the commercial has actually less traffic because it's more walkable. People tend to live their lives kind of within like a 6-block radius or
5-minute walk.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so
Well,
I just think this whole idea of like, well, how many is enough? How many is enough? For me, and I'm not going to speak for you guys, but there is no enough. It's just like, how many do the developers need to build to be able to give us the kick-ass developments that they want to propose? Like, if it's going to take 500 apartments to make it justifiable for them to like invest the kind of money to build an awesome commercial district, cool, then 500 is enough.
And then
If it's 1,500, then 1,500 is enough.
at the same time, you have to use common sense, right? So I do real estate. I actually own a rental, not apartment. I own a rental unit in Bent Creek. Like, we just recently bought a new home and we kept our old home and we're renting it out to a family that's actually waiting to build themselves a new home. So like that, just because you say no apartments doesn't mean you get rid of these bad rental transient
Right.
residents. Like there is a pretty healthy rental market in Nolensville. Sure, there's a huge demand and we can use a lot more, and people can actually invest and grow their personal wealth as well as the town's wealth. But like you're never gonna get rid of that. I think that you have to apply common sense and say no one's going to build really crappy apartments, projects, ghetto type apartments where you have an acre of land going for, or like $100,000 an acre of land. Like that's not gonna happen. Those things happen in like very depleted areas where you're buying the stuff dirt cheap, or it's government subsidized, or government's giving you kickbacks to build those type of places.
Well, it's a couple of things. Again, there's all this nuance in this conversation that like has to be, and I think you were dancing on it just now with it, which is how much is too much, how much density, how many units per acre, or how many units is too much, and you said there's no limit. That on the surface can sound really scary to people, and I think what you have to do is try to envision what would 800 apartments in one development look like. Mm-hmm. Well, and the reality is, number one, in this town, you can only go up so high.
Four
Right,
stories.
exactly.
Or proposed 4 stories, yeah.
So already you're not going to look at skyscrapers. So take that off your list of things you're scared of. Because you can't be. You can't have that. So then you're just spreading it out.
Yep.
Okay, so how is it a land coverage issue? If you're going to have 800 people living on a tract of land, I think the other thing is that people tend to ignore is developments, number one, are only going to be as big as a developer thinks they can sell.
Right.
It would be idiocy for a developer to bring 1,200 apartments to Nolensville because it was at 10% almost of the population.
20% of the units available, yeah.
Right. So like you can whip yourself up into a frenzy about an idea of what could happen
Sure.
without any common sense.
Yep.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, a developer's main purpose is to make money.
Right.
At the end of the day, our town's purpose is to provide services and a quality of life to its citizens. There's no problem with working with developers if the town can work for that end,
Yep.
and at the same time allow the developer to achieve what it's. There's no problem with that. I think a lot of people are equating working with developers to what it looked like in the past,
Right.
which was let's work with developers to let them build sprawling neighborhoods that scorch the earth of this entire
Right.
town, and then also serve them with a bunch of strip malls that everyone has to drive to constantly and generate all this traffic. Also, it's a tiny road, so we can't put traffic lights on it. No one can turn left anywhere. Like, that's the definition of working with developers. It's got a bad name just because of what it's been used to do in the past.
Right.
100%.
The same way you're looking at country music and saying that one artist is what we're going to get.
Yep.
When there's all these different variations of working with developers.
Right.
There's no problem with collaboration if we get what we want out of it as a town.
Right.
And that's the thing that's like so like mind blowing to me is there's not on principle there's nothing wrong with collaborating with anybody.
Yeah.
It's when you get something that harms everybody but the developer that's the problem. And I think a lot of people are jumping through hoops in their own minds to convince themselves that that's what's happening right now.
Right.
I did a very tiny amount of Googling and managed to find dozens of articles talking about how not only is density or apartments not bad for traffic or causing traffic, that I saw several studies that the end result was if you want a low traffic city, you need density.
Of
Yeah.
course.
You need to pursue
Like,
density.
I don't understand how that's like that's the big idea.
Yeah.
Like that makes all the sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, why is this a big aha moment?
What? Like,
what?
like
Yeah, it's like mind blowing.
Well, it's a number. It's like, and
Right.
again, it's like a tract of land can have 800 homes spread across the whole thing, or it could have 800 apartments, and that's a lot. That's a big number, but like 800 apartments.
you're scaring people then.
I know, right? In one small spot, and then the rest of the land is still sold to the same developer. But what do you put on the rest of that?
Right.
Anything.
Right.
I don't want to be the opposite of a fearmonger and be like, oh, it's all roses and beauty. But like, again, as a developer, what are you going to do with that land? A town's going to demand a certain amount of park space.
Yep.
You do that. They're going to demand a school. They're going to demand commercial that's walkable because that's objectively walkable commercial
Right.
is better.
I think that there's this stigma that exists, and I honestly don't know where it came from, but there's this like stigma
The
attached.
60s. It came from the 60s.
Yeah, probably, but it's a stigma attached to developers that like if like all developers are just evil. Like,
Oh, no.
They don't care about the town at all. That they just are coming in here and they just want to destroy Nolensville
I don't have a problem with.
in like in pursuit of profits. or
I don't
whatever.
have a problem with exposing myself too much on this topic.
You're all wearing shorts tonight.
I am. Oh, hey. Now. we have a blurb, right?
Oh yeah,
Give
we'll
blurb some-
let's blur the lower half of this video.
But so like you brought up a great point. I think that Nolensville, the older Nolensville residents, meaning not age but like tenure, are terrified of growth and development because we had such crappy development here.
Sure.
So like you did have like Bill Kodas doing Bank Creek, and you had Fred Yazdin doing Greenbrook North. They just completely like circumvented the whole entire system where they like got the town, or they found every loophole to take advantage of in order to make as much money as possible, right?
Sure.
Like so I don't want those developers to develop a single trek in Nolensville from this moment on. Like I want to make it impossible for them to do that.
Yeah.
Like, but then you do have Southern Land that just got approved. Like you go to West Haven, like there's the same developer that West Haven. You go there and you're like, this looks phenomenal.
Right. We have some premier developers
Right.
coming into town,
And those-
begging to build here.
Those developers cannot like. They could, but they will not cut corners because they are selling a premium product, right?
Correct.
So like you go to like Stevens Valley, which Land Innovations did Stevens Valley, and I got to actually tour their whole parade thing a couple months back, and It looks phenomenal. There's absolutely zero corners cut. They go above and beyond. They put a giant roundabout in the middle of their development to like reroute the whole entire traffic in the area.
Right.
Like Goodall yesterday. As much as I don't like Goodall, and I just think Goodall was a really bad development to pass through at this point. But they are redoing a big part of Kid Road with that intersection. Like that's a big deal.
Yep.
Like that's what you get.
Yep.
So
I 100% agree.
up until this point, the development that Nolensville has seen was very, very like, turn over, like dynamite the earth, like skull the earth type of thing, and dump all the traffic onto Nolensville Road and wash your hands clean as soon as you're done. Don't plant like, how many bond issues do we have where people are like don't have their street trees or don't have the proper drainage or like something's flooding their backyard because they graded it wrong. Like, get rid of that crap. I don't want any of that development here. Bring in like quality developers that are able to make money. Allow them to make money here, so that you don't get the bottom feeding developers.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because I think you're right. That is probably where the stigma comes from. Is just like the history of development in Nolensville and how things have gone. But
my rant's not over yet. Did you know? Did you know that in Burberry Glen, right? Burberry Glen, on a back section of Burberry Glen, I've actually posted this on TNI a few times. There's a giant hill, right? And it's a nuisance to the neighborhood because like now it's kind of all completely built out. That hill is a nuisance because it's just a pile of garbage that like eventually became just like covered with dirt, and it was just the developer allowing the builders to dump all their trash there, and now it's just part of this
like building debris.
Oh it's just and then there's no intent. This thing it's big enough that we can see it on Google Earth. Like it's significant.
Wow. That's hilarious.
And there's like we can't do anything because nobody's caught it. And my point being is like if you attract developers and builders that don't need to be watched at every single move, then the process works a lot better. If you're able to work with the developers that are quality developers and quality builders, then you don't have to have that fear of like, man, they're gonna just completely screw us at every twist and turn.
100%. But to your point, you're just describing where the stigma kind of evolved out of. But so I think that stigma though is really relevant to the current, I guess, state of the debate, because you have a lot of people that just you say the word developer and they immediately just I'm done. Like our commissioners, you can't meet with developers. That you're evil if you do that.
That's insane.
And it is insane. It's like, okay, developers are not evil. If you look around our entire town, we would not have a town. Like, we would not live in the houses we live in. Most of our listeners would not live in the houses they live in if developers didn't come and build in Nolensville.
Right.
For better or worse. But there are varying degrees of quality in development and things like that. And I think that is obviously true. But looking at like the apartment debate, people immediately just hear, well, like, developers who want to build apartments, they're like the worst of the worst then, and it's like if they want to do mixed use and like, oh well, they're so bad because they have to bring 900 apartments to be able to build their development. It's like, no, like just it's a simple economics thing.
It's a numbers game, right?
Like developers have investors. They're running a business that has to provide investors returns. In order to do that, there are costs associated with buying land and actually building out a development, and they have to do that at a profitable level. And in order to do that, like certain things have to provide a certain return on the money that they deploy. So, like Mike said earlier, if it costs $100,000 an acre to buy land in Nolensville, that's a lot of money just to get the land.
Well, I think there is a certain, I don't bring this word up lightly, but there's this like mentality of entitlement almost amongst people here.
Sure.
That's like, oh, well, just go tell Kroger that they need to get rid of the apartments and then they can have our beautiful land. It's like, do you know how many Krogers are being built in the country this year?
Right. Yeah.
I think it's one.
Yeah.
Two. We're one of. I think we're one of two.
Yeah. It's not like we're just beautiful. Like they'll just go somewhere else.
Right.
It's not like we can just go tell them to do whatever we feel like.
Yep.
They'll just move across the street where it's a county.
Yeah, I hate to tell people this, but like from like a developer perspective, like, I love this town. I chose to live here, but like from a commercial like development perspective, this town is 14,000 or whatever it is people.
Right.
It's not that attractive on paper.
Right.
Right.
Like we don't have all these cards in our hand that we're like can just deal out.
Yeah.
The fact that we've got what we've got right now is a borderline miracle.
Well, the fact that we got what we got right now, it's less so us and more so like Antioch growing, Cane Ridge, and Smyrna pushing up on our borders,
Mhm.
which is like the same thing with apartments. It's like you don't want any apartments here, or like forget the apartments argument. You don't want any density here, right? Because like density could come in many forms. Like it could be a condo, which is essentially an apartment that somebody buys, right? So like we don't want any sort of density here. But like you drive down Nolensville Road, you turn on Burkett, there's 800 apartments right there.
Yeah.
All of Cane Ridge is going to go apartments. You have Century Farms. That's all density right there.
Yep.
You drive down Rocky Fork, even down like the most country of country roads, Rocky Fork. You drive down there as soon as you get to the bend around in Smyrna by Waldron. That's a development right there too. There's a mixed use
100%.
development that's going on in Laverne that's all pushing on our borders. So if you're saying like I don't want any density here because it causes traffic, it causes problems. Even if your argument's flawed and you're going to continue using the argument of apartments cause crime and
Even if that's true, is what you're saying.
even if you find some data that supports that on some level, like all that stuff is like right on right on our town limits.
Right.
Like what makes you think that like it won't like if your argument is true, then you should just move the hell out of here because
Right.
it's here already.
Right.
Like criminals don't follow
Yeah.
county lines.
Yeah, we're saying we're already getting all of the quote unquote negative from that
Negatives,
already,
right.
and we're getting none of the positive from
Correct.
it. Which
Right.
anybody with a brain would say there is some positive to
Sure.
it. Even the people who are trying to make an argument are saying, "Oh, the trade-off's not worth it."
Yeah.
Well, you're getting the raw end of the deal right now. If you believe that,
There was a time when I first moved to Nolensville, and I mean, moving into Bent Creek now, like I see this in Bent Creek every now and then. Like
Wait, you live in town limits?
I do live in town limits now, but when I first moved here, I mean, it was like once a month there'd be like a string of like car break-ins, you know,
Yeah.
and
In
like,
Bent
and then they
Creek?
would
Don't
like
say
they
that,
would,
dude. You just lowered my property value.
right, but like they would like, but they would, you know, they would.
we are in an
catch-
apartment. It's probably already lower right now anyway.
Yeah.
But they would like, you know, every now and then they would catch the individual and it'd be like, oh, it's somebody that drove over from Smyrna,
Right.
or it's somebody that drove from
Oh, yeah.
Antioch. You know, it's like it wasn't a person that lived in Nolensville necessarily. Yeah. So there,
That's awesome.
I just think that there is, this I don't know, this idea that like crime only exists in apartments, and
Yeah.
that has not been my experience living in single family homes in Nolensville. There's plenty of crime that happens.
How many times did you get mugged living in this place?
I mean, never.
How many times did somebody try to sell you something illegally here?
Never.
How many? Oh, so you were a renter in an apartment
Yeah.
in Nolensville.
Yep.
How many people did you mug? How many cars did you break into?
How much criming did you do?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, none. Like, it's just this, again, there's a stigma associated with just people that live in apartments that, you know, I don't think it's fair or accurate.
Well, let's move on from the crime aspect.
Yeah.
I've only gotten mugged twice here since we've been here tonight, so it's not that bad. But what about the
And both
other?
of them were by Chris.
Yeah.
He's got your wallet and your phone.
Right, it's true. The other major arguments we've touched on a little bit of the traffic question,
Yeah.
which I think again higher density. Well, let's start there with traffic, and the other one is schools. But with traffic, I think this town, based on what I know about the vision in this town, number one, I've heard some of the regular cast of characters, Larry Feltz, Tommy Duggar, just pull numbers out of places that I don't want to see, of what this town is going to be like if this zoning ordinance passes.
Yeah.
Where you're just going to drive. It's just going to be apartments stacked up everywhere.
Right.
Which is, in the words of Michael Scott, bottles the mind.
Right.
Just because there's zoning that doesn't allow for that. It just is not possible.
Yeah.
And number two, it's not sustainable. A developer wouldn't do that because it's just not realistic.
Yeah.
But traffic, and I think the balance of people saying you need to fix the roads before you add all this density I have an opinion about why that doesn't work, but somebody else tell me why that doesn't work.
Money.
Yeah.
Why though? Why is because why can't we spend all this money we have right now?
Yeah, I think that there's like a misunderstanding, I guess, of it, that comes into this argument, or this debate that's happening around like the financial aspect of roads and infrastructure and things like that. So, I think a lot of people think like a government, like they can just like make money appear.
They could.
To be able to like, I mean, yeah, they could. It's
come
called
on,
taxes.
I mean,
but
10% inflation.
but I mean, you know, Nolensville has historically done a pretty good job of keeping our taxes at a very, very low rate. I think are we still the lowest in the county?
No, Thompson Station, but they don't even have a police department.
Right. So I mean, we're very, very low in comparison to other municipalities. And personally, like I value that. I think it's a great thing. But what a lot of people don't understand though is like what residents and growth actually represents is revenue. So a town needs people to move to be able to grow and take care of things. If Nolensville really like wanted to stay Mayberry, then 20 years ago when they incorporated, they should have put zoning in place that didn't allow people to sell their land for neighborhoods, things like that. The moment they opened the doors and said, "Hey, come move here," that's when the problems really started. And so at this point, we're already 20 years in, people already live here, and now they want this stuff fixed. Well, the only way to fix it is to invite more people here because we need more people, and we need the only way to get some other forms of revenue, like commercial revenue, are to allow some of these developments to be built that have kind of mixed use components. And so is it going to bring more traffic? 100%. Like that's a reality.
I disagree. I disagree with that.
Is it going to bring like the doomsday amount of traffic that people think it's going to be? No, but there will be some. I just personally like I think if you have this mentality that you can somehow live anywhere in Williamson County right now, and that you are not going to experience a place that's growing all around you and the farmland is going to become something else, like you're crazy. Like Nashville is one of the top 10 fastest growing cities in America.
Top 2, yeah.
And I mean, I just like we don't have any control over what Nashville decides to do. But guess what? Like, I mean, you look at Atlanta 20, 30 years ago and how much it's sprawled out and spread and how crazy that growth is. Well, that's the same trajectory Nashville's on right now. And we happen to live in like a really like blossoming suburb. So like to me, if what everybody who pushes back against apartments really wants is they want to live in a nice newly built home, but that's surrounded and makes them feel like they own land, that they live, you know, in the country.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we can't protect some of that and that's valuable.
We should protect some of that.
It certainly is. But this idea that somehow like that Nolensville was always just going to be like a collection of neighborhoods and never need to become more like Brentwood or Franklin or some of the other municipalities that have already grown up. It's just crazy. Like I moved here 8 years ago because I thought that I was getting in on kind of the ground floor of it, of like the next wave of Williamson County. So just I guess I feel like apartments and like that whole side of the debate, it's a necessary evil in my opinion.
Well, I think when I think about apartments from a resident perspective who lives in a house right now, what I think I get, and this is the thing, is people want the positive pieces of anything about living in a growing town like this.
Right.
They can point and say, like for me, it's like, oh, I live across the street from where Darcy's going to be. Man, that'd be really great to live across the street from a Starbucks. You know, so when I want that Starbucks drink instead of a local coffee shop, I can walk over there and get it.
Right.
That's great. The trade-off is I'm also going to have like this other development around it. Also, though, I also get the Kroger. I'm like, oh, I could go across the street to get groceries. But there might be some, if I drive my car, there's going to be other people parking, whatever it is.
Yep.
There's going to be a light there now. Whenever I leave my neighborhood, I've got to wait for some traffic on the other side of the intersection to come out. It's this idea of like, I understand what I'm getting, positive, and I'm willing to have the trade-off for it. The argument I keep seeing about any of these developments is, well, why can't they just get rid of all the things I don't like and keep the things I like?
Yeah.
And then we'll be great.
Yeah, it's almost like there's this mentality that a developer, that like if you just say we don't want apartments, that a developer is still going to come and choose to build here.
Right, because they love this place so much, they're just desperate
it's
to
like,
be here.
It's like they're not bringing these types of developments just for like, you know, the heck of it. Like they are bringing these developments because that's what they're bringing to other municipalities because they work.
Right.
And land costs have gone up, and this is just the way they have to go about it. But yeah, I mean, I don't. When was the last time like you guys drove around and saw like a huge sprawling like big box development going in somewhere?
Yeah, like a Best Buy with a bunch of other things attached
yeah, with like
to it.
like a Target and a World Market.
They're all
and
shutting down the last
all
I
of it.
saw.
Yeah, I mean it's like developers are not presenting that and building that anymore because like the retailers aren't pushing to come and build.
The only thing, to your point, the only thing that does still that there's still a lot of demand for in terms of, because it's affordable, it's a more affordable option for commercial, is strip malls, right? So
Sure.
that's the reason why like the running joke is like something goes up on Nolensville Road, it's like, what is it? And like 500 people will comment, oh, it's a nail salon, oh, it's a burger joint, oh,
Right.
it's a Mexican restaurant, because that's the demand. Like that's the affordable option. If you want to open up a burger joint, you're not going in this like hip, well, you are, but like you like if there is like a strip mall and it has like 5 bays and they're renting it out for $30, $35, $40 a square foot, traditionally you're just gonna get your nail salon. Like it's like the mom and pop shop equivalent of like, yeah, I'm gonna rent this space out. I'm not gonna own it because you don't own them. I'm gonna rent this space up until I build the brand or I fail.
100%.
Right?
Well, let's talk about like mixed use, like kind of combined with commercial. I am sick, and of seeing small businesses, whether they're the kind that I would patronize or not, posting about how they're going out of business here in town, and the reaction being, oh, well, the town should have just come and supported you more, and then you would have survived, or you would have made it. It's like, no, like the issue is me as a middle-aged white guy probably am not going to go make a special trip on my own to a candle shop. I'm just not. Now, if I was in a place where, and I think about like that strip mall behind like where the old Martin's is and like where Brothers is, that whole strip mall. There's like a florist, a barber shop, a vet, a Mexican restaurant.
There's a vet there?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
So we take our cat there. But like, of those businesses, like, what is the crossover?
Right.
I drop my cat off at the vet and I'm gonna walk to the floor. No, like the idea of having like commercial mixed with like, because here's the thing: when you have living space, apartments or whatever you want to call it, in a commercial area, by necessity, certain businesses build there to support the people who live there.
Exactly. That you are hitting the biggest point about mixed use.
So a candle shop in that setting
does not work. It does not work. You don't need candles every freaking day.
Right, but my point is like there is no like incidental traffic in our current setup.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't accidentally go into a place and find something you love because you just happen to be there.
Yep.
Because everything has to be so highly specialized in our current setup where there's not a variety that makes any sense in a place. Versus when you are a commercial, you're a business or you're a developer that's trying to attract it's a two-sided thing. If you're a developer and you've got living space and you've got commercial space, you want to attract people to live in this space.
Right.
So you're going to size your parcels, you're going to price your parcels in a certain direction to make businesses come in that will make that living space attractive to those businesses, or make the other way around. The people who live there think, man, these businesses are here.
Yep.
This is great. And the other way around as well. You want to make sure that the people who are putting businesses in feel like they're attracted to that.
Yeah.
And the people who don't live anywhere near any of that, we actually benefit from that.
Right.
But in this current situation, if you're a small business owner and you're struggling, you should be begging for mixed use.
Right.
That's a
Right.
solution for you. That's
Right.
not going to be a problem.
Yep.
Move in that direction.
Well, and I think we all hear it all the time in conversations. Like people will say, "Oh, I just wish we had this
A
in
lunch crowd.
Nolensville," or "I wish we had this kind of business in
Yeah.
Nolensville."
Yeah.
Like, why won't like this whatever company come and open here?
Chick-fil-A.
And yeah, I mean, the reason is
Clickbait. Chick-fil-A. Clickbait.
but I mean, the reality is like what you were hitting on is that like developers cannot attract those types of businesses because we're not allowing developers right now to build the types of developments to where they can like get the rents at a certain
You're
rate.
not scaling for that.
Yeah,
Right.
like if you bring a mixed use development that has a lot of apartments, they're going to make most of their money on the apartments, which means that they can keep the rents affordable on the commercial stuff, which is going to allow and open up like the floodgates of the types of businesses that can actually afford to do business in Nolensville. It's just economics, and I do have to touch on because you guys brought it up, and so it's just like I can't not say it, but it's like Nolensville can only have so many knick-knack shops, like no offense to
We are not related
yeah.
to, in any form, we are the podcast. We are not the small town charm store.
We haven't gotten any emails about buying anything yet.
But the reason
Go
that
shop there, by the way. Go ahead.
part of the reason that our economy is just like full of that kind of stuff is because like the businesses that are awesome and would love to like that we would all love to have come open here, the types of restaurants and bars and like retailers that are like actually cool and you find in other cities, they will never build in a place that doesn't have high foot traffic, high volume of people, and the way you get that is not by single family homes.
So
it's by like giving them people that live all around it.
You know what's crazy to me is that like people will hear you say that and they'll say like, well, you don't like this candle shop or this knick-knack store, and like you want to drive them out for like something that's hipster and cool and like your beer garden type. Like no, that's not how it works. So like I'll give you an example. If there was a candle shop just randomly just on Nolensville Road next to a mixed use development, and then they happen to be next to a coffee shop or a beer garden.
Yeah.
Like there would be a lot more traffic going
100%.
to that place, and both places can like feed off of each other.
Like
that's the way it works.
To prove your point, so I will go on the record here. You're gonna drag me for this, Mike, but I love Nella Moon. I love it. Like I have no problem saying that. I'm gonna look right at the camera. I love Nella Moon. Would love a sponsorship, free candles for life or something.
I'll take one candle.
No, but I mean,
Those candles are expensive though.
They're super expensive, but they make your house smell great, and so and they have some male friendly scents.
What's a male friendly scent?
Dude, I'm really exposing my feminine side here, but
lavender. It's lavender.
It's what happens when you're a single dad. But Nella Moon, I think, is a great example. They have a huge following on Instagram. They're super trendy. Like it is very hipster in terms of like you walk into that store and you don't feel like you're in Nolensville. You feel like you're in like 12 South or like some other part of Nashville.
I do my like Christmas shopping there. Yeah.
But I think it's a great example. It's in the middle of the historic district, and so like there really is no foot traffic. Like you go there because like you want a candle and people follow them on Instagram and it's trendy and
you don't just happen up in there, right?
Correct.
You're not walking by. You're not window shopping.
They are successful not because of their location. They're successful because they already had a brand built, and so people they're tapping into that. But if you put Nella Moon in something like McEwen North in Cool Springs,
it kills it.
Like it would absolutely slay.
Well, that's what I was thinking of McEwen North the whole time we were talking about this, because how many apartments are around that place?
Right.
I go there because of the collection of businesses that are there.
Yep.
But that collection of businesses would never have existed without the residential attached to
100%. And I just like let's name some of them, right? Like,
brothers. Yeah. Not brothers. Neighbors.
Jenny's Ice Cream. Neighbors.
Yeah.
Shake Shack.
There's a Condado, the taco shop right there is great. The wine bar.
Yeah.
The wine bar, yeah.
Like these are like awesome concepts, and like everybody in Nolensville would look at that and be like, yeah, well, we could have that in Nolensville. But people say that because, okay, yes, like we have people that make that kind of income. they look very similar. They probably work in Cool Springs, so they're familiar with it. But what people don't understand is like, just because you drive to Cool Springs to go get that, and you're the type of person that enjoys that, doesn't mean a developer is going to build it here unless they have an economic reason and are incentivized to do it.
Right,
And that doesn't mean like you need to give them like tax breaks, but it's like, no, like the break in working with the developers is giving them the density
Right.
to where they can make this feasible.
There's a reason why like that strip mall like up on like where the Five Guys is at like Mallory and Cool Springs is like borderline desolate all the time.
Yeah,
It's a collection of businesses the same way that
Strip
McHugh
mall.
and North
It's-
is.
right.
Yeah.
It's not the businesses that magically appeared that made it attractive.
Yeah.
The only reason why those attractive businesses are there, I've already said this, is because it was viable for those businesses to be there because of the residential.
right.
Exactly.
And so if you ever want this town to be what you want it to be, it's not just going to happen because you demand it and say build these businesses here.
Yeah,
You might be able to say that, and then
Chick-fil-A.
right, exactly. You might be able to say that, but then you have to listen when the developer comes back and says, "Great, we want to give that to you, but here's what it's going to take for us to not lose our shirt on this."
right.
Unless you have some data to show how they don't lose their shirt and you know their business better than them,
Yep.
you have to shut up and say, "Okay, am I going to take this deal or not?" But I'm sick of like this people in this town just demanding things
Yep.
like they deserve it.
Yeah.
We're a tiny town, and we have two of the largest grocery chains in the
In the
world.
southeast.
Yep.
Okay, sure.
Public southeast.
In my world, I'm from Alabama. In my world, wanting to build within like a half mile of each other,
Yeah.
and we're over here saying no, we know what you're doing
I
better than
think
we
people
do.
are
than you
gonna
do.
freak out. So like Hardee's, right?
Yeah.
Carl's Jr., Hardee's, whatever. Like Hardee's is building. I don't know when they break ground, but it's approved.
Yeah, it's gotta be soon.
Like right on Nolensville Road, I think up near Burkett.
It's right in front of
Place.
Burkett.
Yeah, right in front of Burkett Place. I don't think a lot of people know it's coming, but people are going to freak out when they see that. Not in a good way. They're going to freak out because they're going to say, like, why? Like, that is like the last thing that
That's
people
not
want.
Mayberry.
Like, people don't want another burger place. Come on, like, hashtag the joke from like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But like, also, it's like a national chain. Like, not at all what people are really.
They
like,
do have a
savoring
leg
for.
up because they're local. They're
Oh,
headquarters
totally.
in Franklin.
Totally.
So
But I think the point I'm driving at though is like Hardee's came in and like didn't have to get any sort of like special approvals or anything like that. It's just straight zoned. It's like this is
Yeah.
what the zoning allows for. I can
Yep.
build a Hardee's here. Developer said, "Cool, let's do it."
100 feet off the
Hardee's
road.
signed off and they're doing it. Like I don't think what people understand is like the reason that we're arguing so hard and so much in favor of apartments is not like it's not like this.
It's not the
love.
apartment. It's not the apartments.
It's the apartments are a cost of doing business. It's like it's a necessary evil to get the kind of stuff we want. If you don't want a Hardee's on Nolensville Road, like change the zoning and allow some of this growth that developers are kind of tied to right now because of how the economy is and how land prices are in Nashville. That's all market driven, but like let them build what they need to build to be able to bring the kind of things that we actually want, the kind of businesses we want, and yeah, I mean whatever. It's also going to like affect infrastructure in a positive way. There's just so many pros about
and
it.
to kind of your point, apartments are not the only like necessary evil. Every residential unit is a necessary evil.
Yeah.
Like you can dial up anybody from old Boma and ask them, and they will tell you the same exact thing. Any residential unit is the evil you deal with to corner commercial. Commercial is where the money's at.
Yep.
So the
Well,
more commercial,
100%.
the better commercial investment you can get in your town, the better your town's going to be financially and traffic-wise, infrastructure-wise, park-wise, school-wise, all of that. And if you allow them to get more commercial by supplementing it with residential,
Yep.
that's way better for you.
I just think people need to stop looking at growth as this thing that's actually going to hurt. Like the way that you grow revenues in a town, or you bring people equal revenue. Like there's taxes, there's all the like tax revenue they generate from shopping at these businesses. There's all the infrastructure and impact fees and things that will come from actually building out all the residences. Like you don't grow revenues in a town by just like closing the door and being like, yeah, we're just not
Yeah.
gonna build anymore. It
Every
just doesn't work.
So two things. Number one, every neighborhood in this town right now is a liability for this town.
Yes.
It is a net negative on the budget.
Yes.
I know we said it before.
Long term, so like the to your point, like people look and say, well, we have all this money in our on our statements and all that. We haven't gotten to the point where we have to repave every road in a single subdivision. Like imagine repaving all of Bank.
But it's coming.
It's coming, exactly. It's coming.
And
all these subdivisions are going to have to like get their roads changed, get all their lights changed,
you
all
almost
that stuff.
you need to look at like all the infrastructure that the town absorbed by letting these developments be built.
And it happens so quickly
yes,
too.
but you need to look at it less as like this doom and gloom thing that's coming in the future. It's a debt. It's
a liability. It's a liability.
It's a debt that like at some point that note's going to get called. And,
right.
And it's not like hey, you can just pay it on monthly installments. It's like we're calling the note.
Yeah.
You got to pay the whole thing.
To put a finer point on it, what we're saying is the tax revenue and impact fees that come in from a neighborhood, a suburban sprawling neighborhood is a one-time kind of windfall that comes into the town.
Yep.
But
it's upfront. It's
upfront money.
Yeah.
And it covers generously. It covers 10 years, maybe, of time.
You're talking about the impact fees, permit fees, and all that.
Yeah. Just like infrastructure.
Yes,
that's fair.
But beyond that, it basically gives you not nothing because you minimal. But the liability that it creates from an infrastructure is it doesn't change. It doesn't diminish over time. It's the same liability forever. So you can imagine a bar going across like this. This is our liability forever.
Right.
Yep.
And you see the money, if this is a line of liability, this is the money, and then it does this.
Yep.
And we're at this point where it crosses over.
Yeah.
Where the money crosses over and it never goes back up. That's what sprawling suburban is doing for us. And so we haven't got to the point where anyone's screaming with their hair on fire, but people with brains and calculators are saying it's going to happen.
We haven't gotten through a single cycle of a subdivision yet. So use Bank Creek's the biggest, and I'm the most familiar with it because I live there. So we haven't gotten through the cycle of Bank Creek where we have to repave every road.
Yep.
That's going to be a big money loss. 25 years later, we're going to have to do it again.
Yep.
25 years later, we're going to have to do it again. And it's like, it's going to continue being a huge liability. And the further out we go, the worse it's going to get.
Yep.
And the people don't realize that Nolensville is only like 25 years old.
Right.
Like, we're the baby stage of this. Like, this town, if you put us in perspective with Franklin, and you put us on a 200-year trajectory, like 200 years out, like, we're going to have to replace all these roads 3 different times, 4 different times. Like, look at the cost of that over time, and it just bankrupts you.
Right.
It's either your taxes become like California or Illinois. That's what those the reason why Illinois taxes are so bad is because they're old enough to go through these few of these cycles of replacing all this infrastructure.
Yep.
Like, that's the reason. Like that. Like, people are like, "Well, I can't believe why Illinois taxes are so bad." It's because like it sprawled out way quicker than Nashville did, and they kept just raising taxes every time you had to repay everything.
I think a great example of like what we're talking about, because we are kind of already seeing this discrepancy a little bit. If people would look at the numbers that are out there, it's like we have like what $28 million in the bank.
Yeah.
Right?
29 now.
Yeah. So
another month, another mil.
Okay. Yeah. So we have like $29 million in the bank, but like, you know, the capital improvement plan that the committee submitted to the board was what, like 50 something million? What was
57.
it? $57 million in infrastructure and things that need to be done.
And it took us 26 years to get 28 million.
But keep in mind that that $57 million does, obviously those are different numbers. Like, here's a plan to spend $57 million to improve all this stuff in town that needs improving. We only have $28 million in the bank. Big discrepancy. That $57 million plan also doesn't include repaving a single neighborhood.
Right? No, not at all.
Like, I mean, you start talking.
Not a single.
And think about when all these neighborhoods were finished, all around the same time. All the roads are going to deteriorate around the same rate, so they're all going to need repaving at about the same time. these are just like massive costs that are just going to skyrocket. And yes, you can bond things out and things like that. But to circle this back to the apartment discussion and revenues and things like that, like the only way that we can ever take on the kind of like municipal debt, like that's healthy, and be able to take on some of these massive infrastructure projects that need to be done, and do it in a fiscally responsible way, is if we have revenues that can justify taking that debt on. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like banks with municipal lending work a little bit differently. Like they won't just loan you the money just because you're a city. It's like
Right.
you have to absolutely show that you can pay it back. And so, I mean, not that banks don't do that in your personal
Right.
life too, but they're a little more risky with
Right.
like, you know, personal loans and things. So I just think it's crazy that if people would just open their eyes and see all the facts, like this wouldn't be such a debate. They would see why this is just something that we need to do.
Yeah.
All right, so one more question I have, and this is something I learned about maybe a couple of years ago. The idea of density is not as like cut and dry as some people may think. It's not as cut and dry as I thought it was. So an example would be, I think Greenbrook South did this, but this is just an example, a hypothetical example. But this is the concept is true, which is you could say I want to have 10 units per acre, and you have a plot of land that's 10 acres, which means you've got what, 100 acres?
100 units.
100 units, sorry, 100 units, yeah. But let's say half of that is a floodplain, and you can't build there. So
That happened, yeah.
So you can't build on half of that land, but you can still get the density of the 10 units per acre.
Yeah.
So those you are allowed without really any consideration, just to like take those 100 units, and instead of having them spread out over those, what I said, 10 acres,
Yeah.
you can cram them onto 5 acres. So visually and like aesthetically and like practically, what you've really got is double the density of what your official on paper density says you have, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people, if they're going to find a data point to argue against density, they're going to look at like current developments and say, well, that's 6, that's 8, that's whatever that is. And on paper, it is what they say it is. But like from a practical standpoint, if you look at how many units are actually fitting on an acre, it could already be as high as what is being proposed. It could be higher physically. I mean, am I off base here? Is it?
No, you're. I have 2 examples with that. So my house sits on less than 0.2 of an acre. If you take, and it's obviously it's parceled out by itself now. And if you take the density of that, it's like what 4 units an acre. My house is 4 units an acre right now.
Right.
It's house in Bank Creek. If you take it at its singular basis, it's 4 units an acre. Is that scary? Like no, it's just a house in Bank Creek.
Right.
Furthermore, the place is actually going out of business. What is that? It's not the peacock. I always call it the peacock. The painted dragonfly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That obviously started off as a residential unit in our historic district,
Sure.
right? It's village zoned, meaning 6 units an acre.
Yeah.
It's sitting on like, I'm gonna butcher this. It's sitting on like 0.07 of an acre, and if you do the math, which don't do the math because I butchering the numbers, like I did the math a while ago. Like if you did the math, if you were to convert that business and back to its original land use, which was the residential, you couldn't do it because it's over 6 units an acre. The lot's so small
Yeah.
that you cannot live it. Is that too much? Like it's turning
Right.
the painted dragonfly, that historic building that we
Right.
couldn't put a mural on it because it's so precious to us.
Right.
Like is that too much density? That one building?
Look,
Yeah.
I think this is just my personal opinion, but just because I've watched this debate unfold online at planning commission meetings with commissioners on the BOC, I think that the density numbers that get thrown around are really just it's a cop out.
Yeah.
And what people don't really want to say is, oh, well, I just don't want Nolensville to be anything other than strip malls and single family homes. Like, if you're okay with that, cool.
Just say it.
Just say it. Like I would have way more respect if you're just like, look, like I want Nolensville to just remain a place where there's only single family homes and a certain kind of commercial development, which is strip malls.
Or big box.
Yeah. Like if that's what you want, cool. I'm not saying that's what I want, but like at least we are like having a healthy debate where like you're not being dishonest about what you really want. Making this whole thing about like, oh well, you know, I'm okay with like 12 but not 24 units per acre. Like, okay, but why? Like why is what how did you arrive at 12 is appropriate?
What you're saying is like if you could just make the argument what the truth is about your argument, no one could argue with you.
Yes.
And then, but the problem is you want to keep bringing data into this,
right?
And then
what makes you by default a bully,
right?
If you prove somebody wrong online, you're a bully.
Exactly.
This is.
Do you want to stop getting bullied? Stop trying to use data to back up an emotional opinion you have about something. Just say it's your emotion.
Yep.
And then no one will bully you.
This is, I mean, for me, like foundationally, this is the reason I said what I said earlier about there is no max number for me, because to me it's just like I'm okay with apartments, any number of apartments doesn't matter. Whatever it takes for a developer to give me the kind of development that I think is going to bring the businesses that I really desire. If that's 48 units per acre, so be it. Well, I don't care what the number is, and it's like because for me, I'm not going to hide behind the number and to like make my argument. It's like whatever the number is to give me the kind of development that I really desire.
The reason why I hate this argument is because it's so subjective. Are you talking about a 10-acre parcel? Are you talking about a quarter-acre parcel?
Sure.
Because like, why would you like? If you can have something where it's like you have this awesome beer garden on the bottom, and then you have like 4 units on top, right?
Yeah.
Like units like this, like this scary, this super
terrifying,
scary, criming unit. Like you have 4 of these on top of this beer garden, but it's on a quarter of an acre, and that makes it 16 units an acre. Like, is that really that scary?
Exactly.
Like, I understand. Like, there's no part of me that would ever be okay with like selling off one of these big legacy lots that are like 300 acres and saying like, you know what, go for it, go build 4-story apartments throughout the whole thing, just pillage the whole area, and then just build 10,000 units. Like that's not okay.
Even me saying I don't care what the max density number is wouldn't be okay with that either.
Right.
But I'm not okay with it because the density and the number of apartments is really just a means to an end.
Right.
If the development doesn't have the commercial aspects that I really really want, then I'm not for it.
Well, I'm also not.
But that's what I'm driving at.
That's why I hate Good. That's why I hate Goodell. Yeah. I think Goodell's a horrible. So like, I jokingly texted you or messaged you today. I'm like, I'm going to like go all out on Goodell because I'm one of those people that like if it doesn't make sense on paper, then stop trying to justify it by and like Derek Adams did this. So Derek Adams is a very big proponent of solvency. Goodell's not solvent. Like why not? What then? Why are you voting for it? Right. Well, it's better than what we could have. Well, it's also like if you held out, you could have something better, right? And like I'm sure people are gonna be shocked. They're like, oh my gosh, the TNI is disagreeing with the mayor. Yes, we disagree on a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Like the dude spent a bunch of money on Sunset Phase 3, which I was like all but begging people not to continue with a dumb project. But like Goodell is not it will not make us money. It is not a huge plus to our budget.
Right.
And it is not the less development that's going to get proposed on that parcel. So like why go forward with that? If it doesn't make sense, if it's not optimal, then why agree to it? And like when you as you guys were talking about this whole thing, I was like making mental notes like to address towards the end of the discussion. Like this is not normal. Like this amount of cornering by developers and the demand here, this is not normal. Like the flip side of that is like when you're driving down to 30A to your salt life #salt life, and you get off the highway and then you see a bunch of dead towns. There's like nothingness and just trailer park after trailer park with empty businesses. That's the equivalent. There's no demand for growth there. There's no investment in that community, and that's what you end up with, right? Like the mill closed down in the 60s and everybody kind of just faded away. That's the opposite end of the spectrum of what we have here. So like this demand is something that you should cherish, and you should prosper off of that. You shouldn't fight it. You should make it work for you.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too is like the one thing that triggers me on like when I debate this online is when people like Tommy Duggar stands up there along with Larry Gardner, who used to be a PC member, so I can mention him, and their biggest talking point is, well, if you pass this, you change our town forever. If you give them density, you can never take it away. That's a bunch of crap. Like you can downzone anything you want, anytime you want. Like as long as there is no site plan that's presented, it is not a taking. There's no vested rights without a site plan.
There's not imaginary vested rights in some random imaginary person who doesn't exist.
Sure, you're gonna piss off the landowner because you just devalue his property, but you're not. There's no vested rights if there's no site plan. Like that talking point is just complete trash. It's designed to fearmonger people, saying like, once you do this, you can't go back. It's like Wendy Mucci back in the day saying like, well, like ordinances are forever. It's like, no, like you can amend the crap out of it at any given moment.
That's why you have not a job, but that's why you were elected.
Right,
the whole
to
point
amend.
is you're there to change things.
Isn't it ironic that the guy saying, like, if you do this, you're going to change Nolensville forever, is the same one who voted to change Nolensville forever
many times over.
Nolensville at one point was just farmland, and Tommy Duggar, last time I checked, voted for every development in every neighborhood that we all live in.
Yeah,
like,
that's the point.
That changed Nolensville forever.
Yeah, if you love the way things are right now,
right?
If you love a ton of traffic and strip malls and no identity for this town, then I got two candidates you can vote for right now that back up a thought process that have sold out that direction.
Thought process is a bit strong. How do you
know? A dogma maybe.
How do you know that though? Because they've never actually said what they believe in or what they.
It's true. Actually, I'm assuming based on who supports them. I was gonna say though,
this was gonna air after your election. That's gonna be funny.
I'm gonna rush the edit this till we get that before. The other thing that I'm against, when you brought up the idea of like if a developer got a 300-acre legacy plot and wanted to put apartments on it, the whole front to back, you'd be against that too. I was gonna say I'm also against if alien invaders came in and wanted to install a constitutional monarchy, I'd be against that too.
Right.
Like we can be against all kinds of things that would never happen because basic economics say no developer is ever going to do that. Like you don't have to be afraid of things that don't if no one's going to make money off of it, don't be afraid of it.
Right.
If it doesn't make sense, you can just find other things to worry about.
Yeah.
And just because you can find a way to be right doesn't mean that you make sense or you're being realistic. Like I can make up an argument right now that will get everybody in this town to agree with me, but it doesn't have any basis in reality. This town is not going to turn into a bunch of apartments, no matter how it's zoned.
Right.
Because this town can't support that.
Right.
Developers can't make money off that. There's nobody that can make money off of that, so it's not going to happen. You can use common sense and just figure out what
100%.
could or could not happen in this town. All right, so the other question I have, and we're running out of time, for real, is...
For real.
I said we have two questions. The other one was traffic, which we've talked a lot about now. The other is schools, overcrowding of schools.
Oh man.
And how we're going to bring in a bunch of apartments in, and then now all of a sudden our schools are just going to be so overcrowded.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll tackle this a little bit because I've said this other places, but in my opinion, the town of Nolensville does not have the job of dealing with schools. That is a county issue. It's the county's job to look at how a municipality is growing and to figure out how to service the students that are
the majority of your tax dollars go to the county.
Correct.
And you should right now, in this point in the podcast, you should put Greg Sanford and Mary Smith in their emails right across.
Right. It is not anyone on the BOC's job or role to worry about, if I approve this, am I going to overcrowd a school? It's just not. That's not how we should be looking and making decisions for our town. We should be doing things that are in the best interest of of providing fiscal solvency for the town, providing services for the town. One of those services is not schools. That's
Right.
a county
It's
service.
a county's job.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. So, like, a lot of the tax revenue that the town brings in ends up in the county's coffers at the end of the day.
Right.
And so, like, there is a benefit and I guess, like, a plan to try and fix schools where growth is a piece of that. The more the town grows, the more tax dollars go to the county, the more the county starts to pay attention that we need another school here. Look, I don't think anybody is advocating that they want kids to be in trailers for classes and things like that. It's an inevitable reality. It's happened in Brentwood. It's happened in Franklin. It happens everywhere.
Yeah, it's happening here.
It happened to me in high school.
Yeah, I mean, it just happens.
Look at how
But,
awesome
like,
I am.
This idea that we're not going to have 2 high schools is ludicrous. Like, our high school is already at a point where it's bursting at the seams.
Yeah.
So, like, that's going to happen. I'm glad one of the developments that's building neighborhood Southern Land, has already they're going to build a school as a part of that. It's an awesome thing. But I just think that, like, Nolensville should not be getting into the debate of, like, at a local level of, like, well, how do we impact schools?
Right.
Doesn't matter.
Well,
let the county deal with that.
But-
That's
well, so,
what
like,
we pay them for.
Every developer pays all the good that comes from development, meaning like impact fees, facility fees, property taxes, commercial sales tax. The county gets all that too. Like,
Right.
every development built here has to pay permit fees for the county, impact fees for the county, school impact fees for the county,
Right.
and we literally split our sales tax down the middle with the county.
Right.
Like, the county gets as much benefit from
Correct.
it as we do.
Correct.
So, like, the one thing to fix, like, if you want to have a better or bigger or more of those schools, like, you at this point you do have to continue to grow.
Correct.
To kind of catch up to the growth that's already happened,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Well, in my opinion, like, I think I've said this in a previous episode, but, like, I think a healthy debate or even, like, a decision-making process is kind of like a math equation. And the whole thing with math is, like, if you have, like, the same number on both sides of the equal sign, you can, like, subtract that from both sides to get a more clear picture of the problem. And I think of, like, schools getting overcrowded as one of those things where if you build density, and this is the argument that's been made, is if you build a bunch more density, you're going to overcrowd schools. And it's like, well, yeah, but also if you don't build density, you're also going to overcrowd schools. So let's just take that out. That doesn't even matter at this point, because either way it's happening.
But it's also the type of density. So if you build another Bank Creek, are you going to overcrowd the schools? Yeah.
Probably
Like
more
that.
likely to. Yeah.
If you build the same amount of units but in smaller form, meaning condo or apartment, like that's a lesser impact on schools.
Sure.
Like, it just is. Like, this place is it's a 1 bedroom, 1.5 bathroom. Like, how many kids can you have how many kids can you have in this apartment? Like,
It's a 1 bedroom, right?
right, it's a 1 bedroom.
Zero.
So it's like one.
maybe
if you have,
one.
No, if you have one, you're
Like
like,
an infant.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
So, like, that's a stretch by one.
Yeah.
So, like this is 1 unit an acre. Like, I have 1 unit an acre basically. Like, I have
Right.
1 unit in Ben Creek. I have
Right.
4 kids. I'm like infinitely
Yeah.
like more.
You're a
problem, Mike.
you're a burden on the school system more than this place.
My
is.
reproductive system is hurting everybody
Yeah.
in this town.
Right.
Well, like, yeah, again, but like you're saying, like a 30 unit development that's 12 units per acre is like what, 2.5 acres.
Yeah.
There's 30 units there, and like a unit might be a 2-bedroom 2-bath apartment, you know, where maybe there's 1 kid there.
Yep.
So you got 30 kids in this whole development, but you're freaking out about density,
Right.
which actually has nothing to do with it.
Right.
Right.
It's that you're ignoring nuance
Right.
completely. It's
I
just
mean-
this obsession with one number.
Yeah, personally, I think that like we should have like a real debate about the schools, which is like not about whether or not the schools are going to get overcrowded by Nolensville growing. It's like cool, like if they build us another school, great. Are we going to have teachers in the classrooms? Because like I heard they had a hard time finding them this year.
Right.
Are we going to have bus drivers? Or are we going to have like 17 bazillion bus
You know my
routes?
rule. You know my rule. No national and no county politics.
I mean, I'll go on the record and say, like, do you know what I think is the number 1 contributor to traffic in Nolensville? Schools.
Yeah.
It's because nobody takes the bus anymore and everyone drives their kids to school. It's terrible. It's
Yeah.
the
The
most
bus
the
service
most
I do.
congested times of day are pick up or drop off and pick up.
Oh, I do it
because
every day.
everybody takes their kid.
I had to go to Home Depot today from my neighborhood in Summerlin, and had to drive through the middle school traffic for Mill Creek today, and then also hit the over there on Rock Springs, wherever the Smyrna traffic too.
Yeah.
So I had 2 school zones. Everybody, and it wasn't buses. It was the cars. It was there were parents parked on the roads that weren't even in school, just waiting for their kids to get out because they didn't want to wait in line.
Yeah.
You're right. It is a school problem.
I mean,
it's nobody's fault other than the fact that the schools aren't big enough to or aren't equipped to
since we
handle
always
everybody.
like say like you should always bring solutions and not just talk about like negatives and what you hate.
Yep.
Like, okay, I think we all learned in COVID that kids can go to school at home.
No.
This is a
No.
super
No, absolutely not.
super unpopular opinion here. But I mean, like, if the county doesn't want to drop like $50 to $100 million on building a new school, hey, like just make a new school that's remote.
Yeah.
Like, let's just
Absolutely
start
not.
having classes.
No, absolutely
You
not.
can just have the teachers
I'm
show
gonna be
up
a
and
NIMBY about that. Take my kids
teachers can teach
miles
from
down
home.
the road for 8 hours a day.
All right. So I think we've hit the end of this one too.
Yeah.
I think I appreciate everyone tuning in to see this god awful, terrifying apartment in the flesh. I have to get out of here.
I hope my car's in the parking lot.
I know.
I hope my car's still there.
I have to get out of here because this is I feel chills. I could have swore I saw my home value fall earlier just by being here. And there's so much crime. I mean, I can hear it. It's silent, but the worst crime is a silent crime. So
I think we were talking about it as a fart.
Oh, could be. It's silent but deadly. But we're gonna get out of here. Thank you for watching Small Town Charm. We'll see you again next time. Bye.